The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first ribbon in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of the never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?
Hello, and welcome to the 52nd episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable. Our hosts for today are Joe, the architect and founder of Dragon Chain, Greg from Rivet, Satoshi Shon, entrepreneur and everyone's friend, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa, crypto evangelist and patriot, and I'm Dave from Den.Social. A quick update on the WBRT layer ownership tokens from last week's episode. Let's see, for this week, each host from last week will receive 222 lot. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 25 lot. And the theme was suggested by Joe Dragon, and he'll receive 25 lot. A reminder, these ownership tokens come with perpetual passive and free edits and governance votes over on Den.Social and in the World Blockchain Roundtable layer. So participation brings rewards. Come participate. For suggesting, I guess that post is up in the WBRT layer. So go in there and let us know what you want to talk about. Let us know what you want us to talk about to you, at you, and 3rd at 7 p.m. UTC. So get them in by then. How's everyone doing? Good day. What's going on and in the world, and what do you think about it, guys?
I think the first thing we have to briefly mention, at least, is this is episode 52. We've been doing this for exactly 1 year now.
Yeah. I read that and then didn't even realize that was a year.
Happy birthday to you guys.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, what's up, everyone?
Yep. Time flies when the world's burning down and you're just watching from the sidelines.
Yes.
It's like those great memes that I see about like a picture of a guy watching a dumpster fire or something, and it says kicking back and watching the Build Back Better show or something.
It's the watching Rome fall, except with cell phones and the internet. Yeah.
Right, and less elaborate costuming.
Yes.
I think it feels like more than a year, actually.
It does, yeah.
It could, yes. Yes, it does. It seems like we've been talking about war and violence for a way too long.
Too long, yeah.
It seems like we've been doing this longer than Biden's been in office. Doesn't it?
I think we have, in fact.
I don't know about
that. He hasn't been in office for a year yet.
Oh, okay. I don't know how time works anymore.
You are correct.
There's no way that he's been in office for less than a year. It seems like it's been a decade already, doesn't it?
Yeah. If you go from inauguration, right? Like, yeah.
It's like we lost a couple of trillion in Afghanistan. We it's like I don't even know. There's too much stuff, right? It's trying to start another world war.
The fastest destruction of America ever.
Well, but the question is, if he's not oriented to time and place, does it count as the last year?
Are we on Joe Biden's relative time? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's sort of like Back to the Future. It just sort of skews off into an alternate timeline, but just whenever he wants.
I don't know. If that were true, I think that
relative crack. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I've not seen Corn Pop yet. So when Corn Pop comes up, when he pops out, that's it.
Yep. We got the Ultra Magas coming now. That's the other fun thing that he's talking about.
Bad dude.
Yeah, it's a pendulum right now. It's swinging back like both sides. It's interesting to see what happens. I'm a little bit inspired that maybe there's a meaty middle ground that can have its own party sometime. I don't know.
I don't think it needs a party. I think it needs to be
I think
just
maybe more than two
conceptual.
eventually.
I think
man.
people
I don't
need to start talking about things as concepts instead of parties.
Yeah.
It's like that's the way
And
that
like,
they,
for instance, the
teams.
unraveling of the excessive power of the administrative state, which it seems that the Fifth Circuit has been playing at recently. Joe, you were mentioning that earlier. I thought that would be a good thing to dig into.
Very interesting. And you know, when I've spoken in the past with lawyers, not even mine own lawyers, that about the SEC, that was one thing that surprised me, that they have their own court, they have their own judges. They've never lost a case apparently, and you know, it's like, why is that? It's like, well, because it's their own court. I mean, they're going to bring charges into their own court, they're going to win. And this, whoever this was, because I don't know the details of who it was, but in this case, they brought up a constitution, which I can't remember precisely.
Real quick, what was the case that Greg brought up just now? I didn't catch what you were talking about.
The case itself is, hang on, we have that in Telegram here. Let me pull up the actual case name so people can.
I heard something about that and would like to hear more, but since I don't know, I'm curious, like, what is the current event?
Okay, so and where's that Telegram channel? Hang on.
They may not have
Processing
lost any cases, but they haven't actually won every case.
Yeah.
So filed May 18th, 2022.
Yesterday. Okay.
Per curiam opinion of the Fifth Circuit Court, with parties being George, looks like Jarksy Jr., Patriot 28 LLC, versus the Securities Exchange Commission. And this was a petition for review of an order of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, case number 3-15255. That's a lot of verbiage, right?
Yeah.
What's happening here is this is the first chance that the plaintiff, Patriot 28, and George Jarksy has had a chance to challenge the administrative ruling of the internal court system of the SEC. They're what they call ALJs, administrative law judges. What most people don't know about administrative law is, before you can go to court to plead your case before a judge of the judicial branch, you first have to do what's called exhaust all administrative remedies. And what that means is you have to go through their internal court and adjudication process if they make a ruling about something that applies to you, that's adverse to you. So, like, if the SEC decides you are issuing a security instead of a utility token, for example, if you want to have the court itself, the judicial branch, have a say in whether or not that ruling was correct, you first have to go through their administrative law judge.
And that's Joe. That's what you were talking about, not knowing before. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
either. So they're basically gatekeeping who's allowed to have a fair trial.
Right.
And I don't know
what's even worse than that.
Yeah,
there's this thing called the Chevron doctrine that up until now has said whatever the ALJs decide a law means, the court is going to give deference to that. And that is something that has happened up until apparently this ruling.
Yeah, and this ruling, they basically were challenging it under constitutional grounds that they are, I guess that they are not being, they are not given the right to a trial by a jury, right? And so Seventh Amendment, and apparently that's what Fifth Circuit ruled. I don't know where it goes from here, and I don't know about the actual case, what they're deciding, right?
There are two paths at this point. One is an appeal to the entire Fifth Circuit en banc, which means all of the circuit judges that sit on the Fifth Circuit will get together and question the first judge panel or judiciary panel's opinion, right? Because most district courts operate by having a bunch of judges that are district judges, and then some of them are assigned to an appeal in an initial panel. And that panel's ruling can be challenged to the whole body of judges before it's challenged to the Supreme Court, or it can be taken straight to the Supreme Court. It's really kind of at the whim of the losing party as to where this goes. Wow. But I'm guessing they're going to probably pursue both angles, and then some.
Wow. We bring up the other point was the Twitter fake accounts, and I have some particularly interesting stuff around that. I don't know, might interest people. That at least for me, and I think for Musk, the matter is not for Musk. It's pretty obvious that it relates to the value of Twitter itself, and therefore, if the bid, will be, I guess, if the operation will continue to purchase, and essentially, I mean, what is released is that they declared as a public company to the SEC that they only had 5% fake accounts. Right? Everybody knows that's BS. Biden has most of the big politicians have a good proportion of their accounts fake. Most celebrities, everybody knows.
World's most popular tweets
one.
have only had 2.5% of the entire platform's likes.
But there's the thing too that everybody knows. Some, I'm not going to mention any because some of them aren't bad people, but Twitter, crypto Twitter people that have 500,000 followers, and they get like 2 or 3 likes on every tweet. Right? It's all BS. They just bump the numbers up. Whoever you would have paid to do that. And back in, like, say 2011, 2012, around there, sometime around then, we were building an app that had some interesting connection with Twitter. We were trying to say, let's kind of connect these things. And when we were in our test environment, we would throw messages that would only be seen by people who had tweeted from various locations. And we didn't want to spam people, so we were throwing them literally into Siberia, just as a joke. We're going to, send this to Siberia. And it was really interesting because we were getting like rappers and, very, cool, hip-looking people, DJs and stuff that were supposedly in Siberia. And it's like, wait a minute. And it was very obvious that these were all fake accounts. And then it came out because at the time, if you remember Y Combinator, that they were always pushing, it's social media. You need to have exponential growth or I'm not interested in investing, right? And that whole culture led to what happened to Twitter, where they pumped their numbers in order to get the early VC money, which is fraud, and then kept doing that to get the IPO money, which is fraud.
Right. And then created an algorithmic piece of bullshit math problem that can't be solved as a way to. That's the argument for, right? What's the other side of this, right? Because I think there is one that's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. How many bots do you like on Twitter? How many actually do you know are bots and you follow them because they're funny or entertaining, or otherwise have some kind of artistic?
Yeah, I've got maybe
a couple.
6 to 12 of those tops.
Who didn't like Satan, the original Satan account? Like that was the shit, but that wasn't a real person in the sense that a real person.
I follow like UFO bot and like conspiracy bot and stuff like that.
I don't think that's the other side of this issue though, because that is a known thing. They are declared bots. They're functional.
It's highly relevant though, because if this is the new free speech friendly Twitter and free speech as defined by law, then to a certain degree there is a limited space of bot that is free expression that ought to be protected under a constitutionalist approach to terms of use enforcement.
I'll also tell you there is a guy whose name I won't disclose, but he says he's a bot, that he's actually not a bot because he's actually joined my Patreon and he's a real person. So there's that issue. Like this one account.
What about anons, for example? Should they have a right to exist?
Yeah.
Right. Or then, how do you know an account's real or not? I don't know.
But as far as advertising, man, it is fraud.
Yep. And Reddit, by the way, has the same issue where the Donald had, if you went to advertise back in the day on the Donald on Reddit, it would show multiple millions of subscribers, but they capped the number at like 600,000. So they were essentially lying on one side or the other.
Can I tell you guys my conspiracy theory on this whole thing? What I think they're exposing or getting ready to expose to you guys.
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
I shared this with Sean yesterday. So the our consensus or our consensus. I'm thinking I have consensus on the brain. I'm sorry. Our census is wrong, is inaccurate, and is skewed. And I think they're starting this with. Oh, my friend just left. I think they're starting this with the Twitter and the bots, and I think it has to do, I will be careful with my words, but with another thing that we count. And they're going to expose that through that, because they've already kind of started relating that to another counting issue.
Interesting. So do you think that the bots have to do with trying to
relate to the number of humans that are on the earth? There are
right,
not the number of humans that are on the earth that they say there are.
to justify
Right.
what the census says?
Right.
That
So
kind of thing.
back in the day, it used to take there's rules about how the census is gathered, and it took so many days because it used to be collected by at the post office and by Pony Express. It took so
Right.
many days to get there, whatever. Well, in the like
Dude with the scroll
1800s
wars.
or something, there was like a fire, and magically the census that was typically kept inside the safes, because there were big safes at the post offices, because they were also our banks at the time. The census was accidentally kept outside. There was a big fire. Census was destroyed. And well, what are the other things that they use the census for? Oh, choosing how many representatives are in certain areas, all these kind of things.
How much money
So
different areas get? Yeah.
all of those kind of things, all this manipulation. So I think this is just the very first peeling of the onion of letting us know there's not as many people here in the US and maybe in the world as we're told, and that those numbers have been used to manipulate a lot of things, including our financial system and our governments and the control and all of that stuff. So I think it's just the first layer of that, of revealing that our census
It's an interesting
is wrong.
notion. It also connects to something else that Elon Musk is interested in, but doesn't seem to mention in the context of Twitter a whole lot, right? Which is the notion that human population is declining and it's dangerous.
Yeah, everyone knows that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
But it's
understand.
interesting to me that that Twitter bots might be like, that's a really novel take, because the Twitter bots might be a at least an advantageous misrepresentation to those who wish us to think the world is overpopulated.
That's what I was thinking.
Speaking
There's a
of
lot of people talking about
misrepresentation,
overpopulation.
I wanted to hit on something that I Am For I Am brought up.
Mhm.
They heard 70% of Biden followers are fake accounts. I heard it was like
50, but yeah,
like 50 to 55. But still, when there's so many things that question the last election, and the main thing is, I don't know if y'all, much more liberals than I think any of us do, Dave.
yeah.
I don't
think
know
so.
anyone, even people that voted for Biden, that love him.
I've had a similar experience, but like most of the liberals that I know, it was more of a okay, fine, but this is bullshit kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone that loves him. I have a friend that I've been best friends with for 30 years. I used to live with him. On summers, I would go work for his dad's car lot up in Nacogdoches, and the man has never told me that he loved me, ever, my life. And he is like a huge Trumper. And he said, Sean, I'm going to tell you right now, I love that man. I ain't ashamed to say it. I love him. I love him. I mean it.
I hear that sometimes too.
Dude, okay. You never said that to me, but all right. Okay. And Obama, same thing on the other side. And everyone keeps saying, I don't think, not saying the election's a fraud, not doing any of that. Just, I don't see how the man got more votes than Obama or than Trump or than anyone else in history. And then when you look at the fact that now it is proven that half of his followers are fake, that's kind of a flag of some kind.
Well, it's weird, but but it touches on the fact that we don't have a really good way to organize politically anymore. Like, our political organization system, the whole political economy of democracy, was a compromise at best when it was invented, right?
Yeah, and also I looked, and the POTUS,
technology may open some new doors for us.
At POTUS has a third less followers than his personal account. And I don't think anyone cares more about his personal like ice cream views than they do the professional, POTUS views. But it's like 32 million to 21 million.
He may have, in fairness to him, he may have a lot of anon accounts that he doesn't know he created and may slip in and out of.
Depending on his level of consciousness.
No, Greg, and that's the thing. I think our system required honor, and there's a lot of that missing now before, and so it's the fact that they broke the number of the number of the population that a single representative would represent, right? And now it's a fixed number, so they can't actually represent their constituents because you can't meet them, especially if you're across the country, right?
Well, I mean, but if they did anything at all, it would be a more relevant question, right? But instead they've delegated almost all their executive authority or all their legislative authority to the administrative branches. So these elections are over people who might, properly motivated, intervene in a juggernaut that some other group of them created a long time ago that they abdicated all their power to.
Yeah.
But what we're faced right now with is a situation where we've got to get rid of this administrative juggernaut before it kills us all, because it is growing like a freaking Borg.
Yeah, well, it's going to kill itself. It's a whale beached, and I don't know how long that takes. Depends if you put dynamite under the whale or not, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, is it really a whale beached, or is that just a way for us to feel a little bit more comfortable about this, this exponential consumption process whereby the entire world dies in a field of suffocating red tape?
There's so many things that our forefathers said, "Hey, don't do this or you break it." Basically, and we've like, okay, we're gonna do that.
We used it like a to-do list.
It literally, it's like, hey, the only thing we got all this set up. Whatever you should do, though, don't start a party political system that could break it.
Boom,
having parties that could break it. What if you get down to 2 parties?
Yeah, we're treating it like the label during Prohibition on a bottle of grape juice that says, "Whatever you do not open this and let it ferment with the natural yeast that's in the air. And whatever you do not. If you do that,
it's like a football league.
Well, don't allow the banks to ever make money, or that could break everything here too. I mean, literally, it's like not euphemisms. It's straight up, hey, don't do this, or this terrible thing will happen. And it's like, oh my God, look at what every week we're like, hey, those Democrats and Republicans.
It's like how many of those forefathers actually said that a central bank was more dangerous than a standing army? And immediately we do it, and it's like a politician says, we're going to get rid of that. Oh, assassination, right? And
it failed the first time. There's actually an earlier attempt to create a central bank that completely failed, that did close down.
Right. Well, and Jackson, right? And I mean, anyway, there's a lot. It's just it's obvious when you end it. So
it's the culture that we've been set up with, and I feel like, relevant to today's topic, it's being it is being waged not honestly, because those topics are too too esoteric to keep people's attention, and so we talk about, I feel like the whole thing is just a gigantic case of societal bike shedding. Like we're politically arguing about something else when what we really are discussing is this other problem we can't get our hands around.
The 2 parties, by the way, that's I was talking to my son the other night, and we were both like, it's an interesting thing, because we were talking about people that we generally agree with, but then occasionally they'll throw something in that fits this really weird, it seems like a forced narrative about whether it's identity based or something else, but that it's really obvious when you look at that. I mean, you stand back and say, you look at what they're talking about, that both sides are 2 parts of the same thing that are just kind of pushing people further and further, whichever direction they're wanting us to go. Mm-hmm. And that's how they use it. And that's why I always talk about the divide and conquer. And it's so obvious when it pops up, because it's like, why are you even discussing this?
It's divide and conquer. It's a shell game disguised as divide and conquer, really, because really what's happening is there's a third thing under this other cup that they don't want you to pull up. And that's the thing that's really to do with the
Right.
direction society's moving.
But it's so easy to control people that way. So
Well, and that's why they came up with the whole color revolution thing and all of that. I mean,
Yep.
then you get into all that. So
Well,
Yep.
Lisa, me and Public Awakening were talking on a show yesterday about how, and I think if we don't start utilizing blockchain for history more,
mhm.
we're going to lose it, because there's so many things I would bring up, and like Lisa didn't know, and then
I actually did know. I was the one that told you it was the Tulsa race riot. We just had to confirm it.
I was talking about
I didn't know about the bombing. I did not know they bombed it.
how we used bombs from airplanes.
I did not know
Well, the
that.
first time it was on our own people, and then they're like, "What?" And then I was like, "I think it was Oklahoma."
Yeah.
And it was like
And it
some
was
kind of
the Tulsa
and she was like, "Yeah,
racetrack.
Tulsa race." I was like, "Tulsa." That sounds like what it was. And then also Philly. When in my lifetime in '85,
They bombed the chicken.
Philadelphia bombed the Black Liberation, whatever the headquarters. So,
Before
but
the
it
war
was
actually properly
much
broke down.
harder. It was much harder to look this stuff up.
They firebombed him from a helicopter, dude.
Who?
The case you're talking about right now.
Well, but when we're talking about the Tulsa race riots, you can look.
No, not that. You were talking about the other one.
They bombed a community with like 1,800 or 1,250 houses, and they're.
And when he's saying he's saying the Americans bombed
Right.
other Americans.
Right,
Mhm.
but here's the thing:
Like,
you used
it's
to be able to
insane.
find stuff on that. It was much harder to find, and then what TPA did find said, now it says, I swear this was word for word what he read. It's not clear whether bombs or just bullets were used, and the pictures are leveled brick homes.
Right. It's not clear
Yeah.
is code for we can't find direct evidence, so we're going to use that as an out to say
But
we don't know
it
for
was.
sure.
I mean, I can remember 10 years ago, even 5-6 years ago, it was bombs, and I mean they're brick homes, and they are leveled. They're just.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you ever tried to shoot something down with bullets, like a tree or something? Like
You can't even shoot open a lock with
in the
bullets.
middle
Like,
of that,
that's a piece of TV bullshit. Like you can't actually shoot a lock open. Like
And
try
we're
shooting
talking,
a building
this
down.
is black
It's
and
not
white
gonna happen.
photos. This is years and years ago. This is propeller planes. But
Yeah. It's like the Red Baron.
The point is, it's hard. I think it was Jason that brought it up. If you say something to like 2 generations, it's fact, man. And so many young people nowadays, they think this is the way it is. There's always been income tax. There's always been paper money, and I'm like, this is an experiment. These things are experiments that have failed. But when you talk to most people, they think, oh, there's always been. It's like, no, dude, income tax is supposed to be temporary.
Into
It
something.
was supposed to go away after World War II, right?
It was originally created, right, with the idea in mind that only the wealthiest would ever pay it. And rather than lowering the amount, like they never legislated that the income tax apply to a lower threshold.
And it wasn't
they
even
set
supposed
some
to be on
hard
income,
number
was
exemptions
it?
then.
Wasn't it supposed to be on a capital gains tax on assets for the wealthy, and it was like for the IRS after World War II or whatever, and it was supposed to be temporary.
That's a thing too.
That was my
That's a thing
understanding.
too. The original iteration of the income tax, though, was literally just an experiment with wealthy people. Is how they sold it, right? But what they didn't tell you is that they were going to inflate the dollar so much that the threshold that they set, because it wasn't indexed to inflation, would quickly encompass everybody.
Well, people are very dumb. They've been doing the same thing for all these years. How they sell it, you hit the nail on the head. This goes along with the current events. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Coinbase, they changed their terms of service.
Yeah,
and now it literally says in there, we can freeze all of your assets. We can take possession of them. We can use them to pay our debts if we file bankruptcy. So you have to sign that now.
They identified your assets as their assets in the terms of service.
And I had to re-download the app. But
that's what a bail-in is
I had
at the bank.
I had to accept the new terms and conditions. And when you talk about bail-ins or anything. If you tell someone what a bail-in is, they freak out. And then you say, oh, but it's only people that have $100,000 or more in one account. Oh, they don't give a shit. And it's just like how they killed free speech. It's like Alex Jones has got to go. What? I don't care about him. It's like, well, it's going to be everybody, dude. You can't. If it's one, it's all. Like, nah, whatever.
The administrative state is like a camel, and the old camel and tent parable, right? Like if it gets its nose under the tent, then the whole camel's going to be in there before you know it.
It's always like, hey, man, we're going to do this. Well, that's wrong. Yeah, but we're only going to do it to those people.
Greg, you said something.
I hate those guys. That's cool.
That I wanted to mention again. You were, are you saying that? So the original wealth tax, we'll call it, right? It's just a tax, an experiment for wealthy people, and then we inflated into that to where everyone.
Yeah. Like they initially set like back in post like right around the same time as the Fed was founded, because this is not a coincidence, right? That the two things were separate streams of thought about how the financial system of the country should be run, but they had sort of happened in parallel, and they happened in parallel in a way that was meant to keep them parallel without recognizing how much overlap they actually had, right?
And it was 1913, right?
Yeah,
you had
exactly.
The Fed was there because we need to stop the boom and bust cycles.
Right.
Supposedly the Fed will fix that, and then the IRS came in because we're about to go into the Great War. We need, and
they agreed to
on the richest people.
Yeah, it was a very, very, like, it was exactly what it is today. It was exactly what it is today. The cap on the deduction, right? The main everybody gets it deduction was what it is. It's just at that time the dollar was worth so much purchasing power wise that
that's interesting,
that very few people made more than the necessary threshold to even have to think about paying it.
It's the same thing with me. Like, I'm younger. I'm in my like mid 30s, I guess, and so I do suffer from some of those things where I was born into a system like that, and I thought it was a different way. I thought it was like, oh, they tried it out with the wealthy people, but then they figured, you know what, this works so great, we're going to change it to apply to everyone. But it sounds like we inflated into it and just kind of naturally happened that way.
Well, and isn't it interesting that both sides of the tax, because most people don't consider the money printing a tax, but it is, right?
Yeah,
the inflation itself is a tax, and so on
it's
one
a tax
side,
on your savings
on
account.
one side, the IRS is cutting into your income, and on the other side, they're cutting into what you're holding.
Mm-hmm.
They're squeezing it. So
stealing it from you while you sleep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people do feel squeezed. We are the squozen ones.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, if you take the purchasing power of the $1913 and retranslate it to today's terms, right, you get this absurd difference, right? Like how much does it cost now to buy the cheapest car on the market, the cheapest mass market car on the market, brand new? We're talking $15,000 or $16,000 minimum, right? Mm-hmm. That can't be your whole household income. So they're setting their market price right where most people who can afford a car because they need one and can go through the luxury trouble of buying one new can hit it. There's a used market that works all the way down to $5,000 range, right? The initial cap on where the income tax started affecting people was right around what it costs to get a decent late model car today. Back then, like that, and that was way more than most people would ever make in their entire lives because they didn't need to. Like you didn't have to pay $100,000 a year because in 1913 terms that was a lot less.
Yeah, I grew up watching westerns where somebody would roll into town and they would pitch a quarter to the
I was just thinking that. I remember some western.
Right. Take off your hat, son. That's $1 bill.
That's more than we make in a whole year here on the railroad.
$1. I haven't seen a whole dollar bill in my whole life, kind of thing, right?
Sir, you can have whatever you want. You stay all week. Just let me know what you want. It's like, holy shit. That's exactly what happened.
Well, exactly. Where whoever it was, there was something, I can't remember why I even know about it, but somebody somewhere they picked up a rock, and it was a heavy rock, so they used it as a doorstop. And later they found out it was gold. They went and cashed it. $25,000, but it was this huge piece of freaking gold, $25,000, which was, basically that's retirement, and I'm going to buy the town. In those days, it was $25,000. Like, wow.
Well, then if you really were to fairly look at it, I always make the point that if you want to look at how inflation has worked, Ford, he used to pay everyone in gold. The lowest assembly line worker got paid in gold. And if you look at how much
off too, man, that was controversial.
If you look at how much the assembly line workers who have good jobs, they're making like $38 an hour. It's like a good job, and what they're making annually is less than comparatively, the Ford worker made 100 years ago.
Oh, you know what? I keep seeing this now, and this is a meme that keep popping up. That when you compare today's average, worker, what they make and how much they work, to a medieval peasant, and that a medieval peasant works 1/3 of the time that you do now. And I didn't know that's how a lot of the churches were built, because people would be bored and they would volunteer for their local church, and they would build these 700-year churches. It's crazy.
Now, in fairness, right, like to the fairness of the other of the case for economic growth, right, and for the the system that we've built being sort of as best we could do, minus some stupid choices at the time, right? Like quality of life for somebody who works today at the lowest rung of society supersedes that of a medieval king, right? Like a peasant could never hope to achieve what the king could hope back then. The king could never imagine what our peasants live like today, right? Like
mostly like oranges in the winter, right?
There's no electricity, there's no refrigeration. Like we've done amazing things with economic growth. It's just that the way that we've gone about it has come to an edge where it either needs to break one way or another, and a third solution is preferable to either of those ways it might break.
With the caveat that there are still a lot of people without refrigeration and air conditioning.
Right, and we should be able to give that.
And there are a lot of people where two members of the household have to work multiple jobs in order to get food.
Right. Society should be able to do that.
I remember as a kid,
running water,
and I brought this up right when the Roe v. Wade thing was leaked, because that was such a huge part of that's the only thing, that in my entire life that normal folks would get as mad as everyone does nowadays. Nowadays it's like, it doesn't matter how small the issue is. People get as angry as they did for Roe v. Wade, like in the 80s. Like that was the only thing people would be like, "Fuck you, I'll punch you in the face."
Can I have a small window to rant on this?
But hold on.
Tiny rant.
Go ahead.
I have one little quibble with people on our side of this thing. Where the hell is everybody who is arguing correctly that bodily autonomy should have prevented us from having mandatory vaccines and masks, defending these people? Why are we not out there shouting as loud as they are that bodily autonomy is a constitutional right?
It's a funny meme.
We should be. Like, what the hell? Like, we have a chance to win allies on a side that was diametrically opposed to us right now.
No,
what the fuck?
We
people?
don't, because that's
They
not
won't
how
listen.
it works anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
You're talking
They're
about
standing there. They're standing there
right?
with a mask on, screaming, "My body, my choice."
Right.
Like,
no, I know.
Well, wearing the mask is their choice, though.
it's completely.
Yeah, but they want you to wear a mask.
But then they want to force an injection in your body. Yeah.
I feel like maybe if we came at it from the standpoint of let's treat these as one principle and argue together, that they might go ahead and come with us.
And that's the point, by the way, because the Roe v. Wade leak, you can't convince me that wasn't intentional as a distraction, because something else was going on in the world.
Yeah.
The vax stuff came out, the 80 page or 800 pages or 80,000 pages, whatever it was. The big
financial
dump.
Reports came out.
And then now you have all these shootings. It's like one after another after another after another shooting. It's like, what are they trying to distract us from? What is the issue? That's always the key. You figure out what they're trying to distract from.
They're moving forward with some bad gun stuff.
Yeah, I wish we had
with a lot of bad stuff.
Okay,
it's probably
we should
timed up. We should get to the topic, but yeah, there's a bunch of weird stuff happening, and there is a bunch of suspicious things going on. When you read reports and they don't seem normal, maybe they're not.
This is something that's worried me that Greg brought up. I've always thought, politicians are morons, and then Greg has brought me around. They're not morons, but they're I would say a better analogy is that they're actors,
which is worse.
They only know what people tell them, and they're given a lot of bad information. Now, when it comes to El Presidente, I do think that he's a 90-year-old dude who's very senile.
Well,
I'm
I
going
know
to
he's
get into
80 or
it,
whatever,
but
79, but I think he is not 100% there.
He's
What-
a
You can
puppet,
watch
not
him
an
talk,
actor.
and you can see that. And I think whatever he's told, because I don't think he's lying when he's like these ghost guns, and they was the AFT. He calls it the AFT, doesn't call it ATF. The AFT is this, and you can't have the ghost guns, and they're going to kill the babies, and you can't. And
Yeah,
he's scrambling, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's,
but
it's
he's going to
sad.
push.
Honestly, I feel sorry
was
for
a
the
bad
man.
dude.
And he's pushing stuff that is
the thing.
that is bad. I mean, really, really bad. And I think there's just say, hey, you can 3D print this, 1,000 kids die just automatically.
There's nothing new too, right? And again, let's go on to the topic, but that's nothing new. I've said before, even when I was in the service, when I was active duty and under Obama, and he was vice president, we would still make fun of Uncle Joe for being this guy that, like, why is he vice president then?
Right.
And it's the same thing. I think on the left, most
He's
people,
like the czar of doddering.
my lefty friends, have that opinion of, like, fuck Biden, but I guess if that's what we have to do to not have Trump, fine.
Why is he president? That's the question that's
so that really is.
He was vice
the reason
president
a lot of people voted for him.
because he was the evil white racist that allowed Obama to get elected and get support from the evil white racists of the Democrat Party. That was their token.
He was their meme.
Like, hey man, we'll make your guy vice president if you let the black guy in. That's why he was vice president. That's why I was like, no, he was the Grand Wizard of the KKK was his mentor. He said, my kids won't grow up in a racial jungle. He voted against civil rights, and he was the token racist.
Oh yeah, you can actually
Obama to get elected.
If you play the balance of clips in the 90s of him talking in front of the assembly when you got it recorded on C-SPAN, good shot. Like if you threw a dart at the whole freaking cut of reel of footage of Biden talking, there's a good chance you would hit a discussion where he was arguing for a border wall. That was a big thing for him. He was a big fan of the idea, for example.
Yep. A bunch of people up there that we don't agree with,
but
vote them out. So let's move on,
because that is yeah, exactly. That's an aside.
If that worked, we might do that.
So the topic this week is Web3 culture wars, and Greg, you proposed this one, I think, right? So
I don't know if I proposed it or if I clicked on it and voted it up, but
okay, well,
one or the other.
You're getting credit for it.
Awesome.
So that's what we are.
So we should double check that.
Yeah, we'll double check.
And the context I understand Web3 culture wars from is maybe a little different from the way we understand regular culture wars, right?
Sure, because Web3 culture wars, by definition, I guess, is different from the culture wars you have between, for example, Web3 people and non-Web3 people.
Right. Or like
Bitcoin only
people versus people who are, mythical Ethereum maximalists who don't think that they are actually maximalizing their thing, but call themselves multi-chain people, and then the other people that do the other things. Yeah, all of that set of it, coupled with the fact that there is
ecosystem,
sort of an NFT culture and a DAO culture too.
And it's weird. It's a brand new industry, right? So it's a brand new industry, and everybody wants to do it their own. Everybody has ideas, which is great. Everybody has ideas. A lot of people have ideas that they're very hard line on, and so I guess that's what creates a lot of these.
Yeah.
So let's dive into it, right? Let's see. The first question is from Jacob Wayne. Jacob asks, super generic and all about the love here. How can we help each other in the Web3 space and solidify this movement for adoption? Yeah, a lot of people have great ideas, and it would be great to work together on those ideas, right? So how do we get to that? How do we get beyond the division of, no, we want my idea to work, not yours, because mine's better, because I say so? How do you get beyond that to, all right, let's collaborate?
Rational discourse, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, that's
important.
I mean, at the core of all of this movement underlies this sort of cypherpunk ethos too, where the advocacy was to be done through what you create. The things that you build are supposed to speak for you, right? It's not that that cypherpunks were all about privacy, and so they need to start a political action committee. No, they were going to code, right?
Yes.
They were going to write things that people could use, and the market would then decide.
Yeah.
So to me, I think the way to do this is to focus on what you're building, and then try to help the people who you agree with, how the culture should go, build their thing too, and the winner will be whoever gets the most adoption, whoever gets used by
makes
people.
sense to me. If it's better, it's better, and it should stand on its own.
And then you don't have to go through the trouble of trying to tell people that they should stop doing what they're doing.
There are a lot of people though that don't build, right? That are here for as users, as one, and as interested parties. And I think for them,
they're the sovereigns,
it'd be best to not take part in attacking projects without the research. Now, if you do the research and you understand what they're doing, by all means, say why'd you do X? Why'd you do Y? That doesn't make sense. Are you doing something that that doesn't fit what you're saying?
Buckminster Fuller, I think, had the right of this, right, Joe? With the idea that you shouldn't try to destroy a system that you disagree with. You should try to build a system and support a system that that you want to see change in. Like, so if you're trolling a project to try to get it to change, odds are what you need to be doing is supporting a different project instead.
I agree with that.
I think a big part of it is education and killing Web 2. I think we're at a point right now, and especially you guys, okay. There are people that don't know there is a Web 2 or a Web 3.
I was going to say,
at the point in history, we are, and Greg made this point, that the companies, the industry that made the riding crops were so huge and powerful that they had political pull. Just forget about the carriages or anything. Just the people that made the companies that made riding crops. They were so huge that they had political pull. And we're at a point now where people need to abandon Web 2. They need to see it as, hey, there's cars and then there's these horse and buggies. This is just, there's not even a question, about the future and where this can go, about how much better this is, versus this, or wooden wheels versus a metal wheel. I mean, we need people to see Web 3, to understand what it is, and then to abandon and to demand it.
But don't you think that they would do that if they saw the dangers of Web 2? That's where I do believe, because in marketing, people will listen to you if you talk about what you love a lot more than if you're just bitching about what you hate. I totally get that. Don't just sit there, harp on, attack things. But at the same time, if you don't tell people the stove is hot, danger, they're selling your data, they're exploiting you, they're spying on you. If they don't know, then they're like, why not use Facebook?
I think when it comes to Web3,
because the Cantillon effect disguises the fact that you got burned until way later.
Explosion of at this, and we always say, oh, things go so much faster in crypto and blockchain. It literally does. We have went so fast that people they can't catch up. Even with the internet, I mean, there was solid 5 to 10 years of getting AOL packets and buying a 286, and then I gotta buy a new computer.
But that was a hardware issue, don't you think? This is a software issue. Software can go exponentially fast.
I'm talking about the speed of that technology versus the norm.
I thought you're talking about adoption. Okay.
Well, so you're talking about, Sean, the rate of change in the underlying technology available to buy.
Yeah, but see, okay, so grandma and grandpa were buying a computer and knew about it and knew the value of it when their grandson and granddaughter were 100% into it, getting the best thing, so everyone knew. And we're at a point now where only a certain few people know, and grandma and grandpa have no clue that it exists.
But
What if
if
we're
you
just
remember the
still
adoption
looking at the
curve for that,
computer as if it's some kind of revolution that's past? What if the computer, in fact, is still being understood, right? Like, what if this is
It
just the
is.
next phase of
Yeah.
understanding the
But
computer?
if you remember back in those days, the introduction to normies of the computer was largely focused on word processing, because before computers were available, most people were buying. It's like, oh, instead of a typewriter, I can have this thing that I can change the line before I print.
Yeah,
Right?
a lot of people nowadays don't know what word processors are.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to blockchain. That right. I keep harping on this always, but the fact that most people who are early in, and I get so frustrated with it that everything is focused on a financial, right? That blockchain, just like a computer could be used for a lot of other things. Blockchain is not just for currency that,
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, how many of you guys are familiar directly? I bet Joe is, but how many of you guys are familiar directly with the concept of the Turing machine?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
What it hypothetically means. So if you want to do a little computer science experiment, you can create a Turing machine of your own with a piece of paper and a pen and 5 seconds. You draw 3 boxes. You label one the CPU. You label the box on the left input, and you label the box on the right output. And then the CPU is a hypothetical construct that can solve any problem that is logically solvable, given enough time. And you've got yourself a Turing machine.
I remember
the trick is figuring out what questions to ask it, and how to transform it once you got it in there.
I had, and it had that little tiny screen. You can only see like a few things. But I was like typing like stuff, and then I would tell my friends that come over, "Hey man, check this out!" And they like, "Who's in the office typing?" Like, go look, and they go in, and it was a typewriter, and it was typing by itself. There's no one there because it was basically printing, but it was a typewriter, and they're like, "Dude, this typewriter's going by itself." I'm like, yeah, it's like there's a ghost in the room, man. And it's like this is mind blowing, man. I was like, yeah, I typed all that stuff out, hit a button, and it's gonna type it all, man. I got to go through it first and move stuff around, fix things, and that was like for that they could understand that, you know what I mean?
But it was no whiteout needed.
Just type it away.
But in reality, it's like is an aspiration machine. Within it is the answer to every problem we could ever want to ask that could be solved. We just have to figure out how to ask it and whether or not it's solvable.
These are really good points, Greg. Right? Like everyone doesn't care about that. Is the point that I'm saying?
But I mean, like, coming to terms with what that means is the process of this culture, right?
People care about being able to edit it before printing it, that kind of thing. Whenever they got their computer, their word processor, they didn't think, oh my gosh, I had this Turing complete machine where I could do anything with it.
Right.
Like, oh,
and the idea of like a hyper document with embedded data behind the data behind the data didn't how I feel
with blockchain and with culture wars and with like everybody fighting over the tech and what should and shouldn't be used. Adoption wise, like people don't know what a Web3 is, right? They know what the web is. Mm-hmm. That's where I sort of think that this is going, is that it's going to people understand as the internet, right? Now, maybe there's more networks in the future that are more easily accessible. So people recognize that there's not just one internet, there's different networks. But besides that, like the internet's going to be the internet and people are going to pay for Netflix on it and they're going to like go about their daily lives. And some things are going to be more convenient. Some things are going to be cheaper. Some things are going to work better, have more security baked into them. They're going to be able to prove things easier as far as, like if somebody doctored a document or is giving you fake news or whatever. But largely, I think that the adoption doesn't come until we stop talking about all of the cultural war stuff and the technical stuff. And we simply have an interface that people can use and is intuitive. And it's just the web. It's just the internet and computers and my phone. Yeah. It's an app on my phone. That's it.
So maybe coming back to the question, the answer that you would give would be the right answer to pushing this technology forward and getting it to realize its changes is to come to a detente on the culture war, to understand that it's unwinnable.
I think to understand that it's actually slowing adoption. If people could understand that what they're doing is shooting themselves in the foot.
Yes,
that's the trick, is to get people.
Every time a Bitcoin maximalist talks badly about Ethereum, every time an Ethereum maximalist talks about how horrible some shitcoin is and you shouldn't touch it. No matter if it's bad or not, in all truth, it depends on how they frame it. If they're saying, "Look, I'm not gonna just use name calling to talk about a project. I'm going to tell you this doesn't fit this, it doesn't fit this, it doesn't fit this. By all means, if you want to invest in Luna right now, do it. But we will tell you these things that are bad about it.
Maybe I'll give you one that will make you a millionaire. Who knows?
Yeah. So, and it's that's the biggest part of the issue, because you're exactly right. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. And in fact, if you ask me, the controlling authorities, whether it's the banks, whether it's the VCs, whoever it is that's lobbying the SEC, whoever is lobbying Elizabeth Warren for this stuff, is essentially controlling you by splitting you off.
And these people aren't fucking around. Here's the thing to me that I think is really crucial here. These people aren't fucking around, right? You saw what happened to insert your revolutionary figure here, right? Aaron Schwartz, not with us any longer. He had some revolutionary ideas about the freedom of information.
The FBI drove him to suicide. The FBI
that
life hell until he gave up.
They drove him to suicide, right? Like we don't know what happened in that room, but but whether or not they did it successfully or they made it look like they did it successfully, it happened.
Even if you assume the official story is true, it's still bullshit. It's still abuse. It's still un-American.
Right. Then there's McAfee, right? McAfee's another great example. The fuck happened to him? What's happening to Assange right now? Well, what did Martin Luther King? What the fuck?
I mean, maybe that's the MO.
All the revolutionaries are being butchered.
Martin Luther King, they told him to kill himself, and he didn't. So anyway.
So to think that this is not going to be challenged in a way that will have the full consequences of what happens when you contend with powerful,
I think
is something that our culture should not take for granted.
Because we're not in a revolution.
Yeah, people shouldn't die.
What if we are, though? What if the revolution is bloodless?
I disagree with you.
But he's saying that people should stand up and fight for the revolutionaries, stand beside the revolutionaries.
Lisa makes this point when it comes to Trump. Everybody wants a savior. And I think people don't want leaders.
Yeah.
People want someone to come in and say, fix everything.
Yeah.
You're your own savior.
People
need to be led, and you need to fight. And sometimes it's going to get messy.
It's the soft human issue with comfort. That once you get to a comfortable society where it's easy to live, then a lot of other things fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and an easy way to think about that is just, I think it's easy to kind of wrap your head around the idea of like security and convenience being two ends of a spectrum, right? You trade security for convenience. There's a middle ground in there somewhere, and everybody has their threshold where they're comfortable, right? But more and more convenience becomes the important thing over security, and so we give up security, but that makes it easier. And the same
I think
thing.
there's another factor too. I think there's a fear of self, right, that comes with this, a fear of standing up for yourself. You are people who don't are simultaneously afraid of what might happen if they do, and afraid of who they will become if they do.
And I have to check myself on this too, because I'm super guilty of sometimes being the guy that's like, I wish somebody would do this thing. I wish somebody would make that thing like, better than this, because it could be done this way. And I have to rein myself in a little bit and be like, bro, you're going to have to do that. If you want it done and nobody's doing it, well, bitching about it's not going to help anything. Telling other people that they're not doing it the way that you would do it isn't helping anything. You kind of need to go do it yourself and then show what you mean.
And by the way, early blockchain, I'd say to answer this question, at least one of the ways that you could look at it is the way that early blockchain community worked was very, very familiar to anybody who had ever worked or used an open source project. That it just felt, not that it was welcoming. There was lots of rude conversation, of course, but it was more than anything that how do I say? It was about the tech. It wasn't about the number, because there was no number, right? In this, if you introduced a number that attracts people who don't give a shit about the individual liberty side of what is Bitcoin and what is blockchain, right? And that's, I think you have to consider that across the board, because if you lose that, then this just becomes Wall Street on steroids.
So here's a thought. As the dollar's dying and we're seeing the Dow crash and all this, will Web3 be released? Will there be kind of a beautiful destruction of the dollar and a decoupling of it, and that value be seen when people aren't valuing it in a dollar? When will tech be important? Will the use case matter when people stop counting it in dollars and see it for what it does?
I hope so. It
Because
might.
I think that's coming. I think that's coming.
Yeah, and I think that the way that the easiest way there would be a parallel system that people can opt into either one, and then they can just see that one's better on their own and decide to opt out of the other one.
But what will happen organically? Because it's if
Organically.
one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, and all of a sudden, when I'm paying rent, my landlord says, no, I don't want those dollars anymore. You know, what do you have in crypto? That's when it becomes something that's like, well, how do we measure it then? It's like, well, how about if you give me a thousandth of a Bitcoin? I don't even know what that would be, 10,000th of whatever it would be for a typical rent, right? That all of a sudden, that's when people realize, okay, I'm going to associate this not with because the thing that's most perplexing to me in this state right now is how in the world Bitcoin is so tied to the crash, that as the Dow crashes prior to when it was well regulated and when it was so well embedded into our traditional financial system, which maybe is fractionalized, I don't know, that prior to that, every time you had a major bank run, like I say major, Cyprus, little tiny island, it created a Bitcoin boom. Why? Because I know why this tech's here now, right? I can actually see that's happening, right?
There's also some impact with the ability to write futures contracts on anything, right? Anything you can purchase. Like there's no need for government permission to have a long or a short on Bitcoin or ETH if you're willing to write a futures contract for delivery, right? And that's a big part of what moves the market. I don't know if everybody watches the futures expiry dates, because I carefully watch those when it comes to trying to guess which way the market's going to go. There's a consistent pattern, depending on what the balance of those are. Like basically when those contracts get called, you don't know if they're short positions or long positions until they get called. More longs, price goes up. More shorts, price goes dramatically down. It tends to move with this delayed signal that comes from this options expiry.
I think a big part of what we're talking about, though, especially, I think, Joe hit it on the head, and I was talking with Lisa about this, this week, that there's too much volatility, and I think that's one of the reasons why BlackRock and Citadel and all, I think they're pushing for that massive volatility in crypto to discredit it for that one reason, because the landlord won't say, "Oh, I don't want these dollars, I want that Bitcoin," if a week later your rent is half off.
Yeah.
Which would happen. That's what happened in the last 2 weeks. Bitcoin dropped like 50%. So your rent, that's not, I'd rather have the dollar. Yeah, it's a piece of crap, but it's slowly going down. I know it'll be around this much in 2 weeks, in a month. In a year, it should be this much. It's much easier to hold on to an asset that is slowly dying, versus something that's up and down that you don't know. That's gambling. That's literally gambling, versus fiat just kind of sucks.
Yeah. And something we missed in current events was the whole Luna thing. And
we didn't talk
the
about
fact, and I mentioned this before, the fact that Janet Yellen had that in her remarks. They never respond to what's happening.
I was going to say a minute ago,
I just feel bad for the developers on that team, I have to say, because I know none of them set this up thinking this was going to happen. Like,
you can almost see
it sucks to be those guys. Like, I just feel bad for them. I wish people could separate meaningfully the way that the market was handled or the market side was handled, the way the tech was done, because those people are probably just like,
I don't know,
train fucked right now, and they didn't see it coming.
I think if you're trying legitimately as an engineer to model a stable coin, there's an interesting experimental approach, which an algorithm to get a market to stabilize it, versus literally just fucking holding the reserves that would map to that stable coin, which is what it should be doing. But anyway.
Yeah, I got no problem.
I mean,
Experiment. You know, you have what works and what might work if we try it, and you should try those things and see. But to act like
and to apply tens of billions of dollars to that experiment is the question.
not
right? Who did that?
to not admit that it's
Maybe.
an experiment, to not admit that it's not something that is a foundation to build upon.
Yeah.
Well, how do you properly convey don't invest more than you can lose?
Yeah.
Like, how do you properly you can't. Like, everybody always overruns that.
And that, you know, and just to round out this question, you know, that kind of thing, Luna's been basically all that's been on Den.Social lately. I was looking through during the coffee show. I was like, oh, what's on here? Oh, Luna. It's a huge thing. It's a huge, you know, thing to talk about. But that drives people to be angry, and then people want to be angry at someone else, and then, you know, you have people laughing at people that lost their money on Luna, and you have people, you know, like
Right.
that feeds
They're
into-
talking about that guy getting arrested in South Korea or something. So
Yeah.
Duquan,
well, there's some
now,
weird
that's
things
the
that happen.
latest. Yeah,
Apparently,
crazy
he like liquidated his foundation before the crash, and there was some weird stuff that happened. Yeah, people should
He
talk about
owes
it, right?
$78.5 million.
I never
in
followed
taxes.
it prior, but
And
I didn't realize what an a-hole he was. You know,
Me
but then,
either.
showing it, it's like, wow, okay. I mean, I kind of get some of the
Yeah,
hatred
he was
for-
like,
but
he was trying out for the role of Messiah, and that never works out well for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on. Great combo on that question. Great question, Jacob Wayne. Thank you. Josh O has a question. Could you say that culture war is necessary for the evolution of the industry? Thanks. Maybe a more mild version of a culture war. Maybe a culture debate.
competition.
Yeah.
Competition. Yeah. A contest, a competition is people trying to perform their best to prove that they are capable, and that sounds very healthy. It's not a war.
Right.
It's a content.
To declare war and to stake a side is probably not necessary and probably counterproductive. But to participate in the discussion when some people are treating it like a zero-sum game, and thus a war, like, this isn't a zero-sum game, I think is the key here, right? Ultimately, the shape of this is whatever the market finds valuable, and you know, if part of your efforts as a culture warrior are to destroy valuable things that would otherwise succeed if they weren't being targeted for destruction, you know, that's where it's counterproductive.
I think once again,
what's useful is like
it's so small that you can call it a culture, that you can call it a community. It needs to just be the thing. And yes, crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the women. That is what needs to happen. Now, we've got to step back.
But Shun Tzu would argue that we've gone about that all wrong if that's the case.
Step out of our bubble. I keep you going back to cars. You know, we had the cars versus the buggy, killed it. But then what happened? There was like hundreds of U.S. auto manufacturers. I mean, there were so many. When it became like the thing, there was this war, and in the dust that settled, there was like a few you know, big auto manufacturers, and then it got down to less and less and less. But there I think it's part of the development of a technology, and this technology moves so damn fast. And I think that, like Joe, it's like Henry Ford. I mean, Greg, you people are like leaders in this technology and in this industry. So you really don't. I don't think you guys look at it from the outside perspective.
I got to disagree with that. I'm sorry.
Moves,
I know that's
so much faster than any other technology when it comes to the technology itself. When it comes to adoption, when it comes to so much, and looking at stuff through history, it was much slower.
Like Lisa was saying, it is software, so you don't have to build up the manufacturing pipelines to
distribute. The distribution is
but we're not the
quicker
leaders,
as well.
though. We're not. The
Because it's
customers
not
are
the
the leaders,
physical.
right? Like it's a sovereign consumer returning is what this is. Like,
Well,
to a certain degree, we are servants of what people want.
okay.
That's the community. That's the community thought process. You have there's a bunch of dumb sheep that are the masses, that are the billions, that are just sitting there like, and
I agree with Sean. You have to create the product for the people to know.
Stuff
true.
So that they can understand. You guys are the ones that are putting it in.
But try to get a sheep to eat.
So that
try to get a sheep to eat.
Know what it is
dirt.
And start
try to get a sheep to eat dirt. It won't.
Well, can I ask you guys? Have you when you consider this, because from the inside I can see this, and a lot of people on the outside don't quite get why this is so important. But the interesting thing, and I usually compare it to the internet, and as the internet came in, it was largely an engineering culture. It was communications. It was FCC regulated. It was all about technology, communications, and it went extraordinarily well and very fast adoption for technology. You compare that to the buggy to car, same thing. Is like okay, it went through. You compare it to candles and gas lighting to the light bulb, right? It's like, oh, it's a new technology. This is amazing, and it's permeated through society. Guess what those technologies did not have that for some odd reason we do in blockchain? What is it? A regulatory body that hates this new technology, that's coming in and literally trying to freeze it, trying to kill it, irrespective of the use. Now, I understand if it's like, okay, there's an obvious scam. Why was BitConnect not
But
closed
that's
down
because
right away?
This is about decentralizing, and that is
No, the internet was too. No, the internet was too.
No,
This
I
is
don't hear what
because
Lisa
this is
said.
about
the car.
money. It's about the banks.
It's
about the
absolutely
VCs.
about money. Yeah, the car and what was your other example? The telephone thing. All of that was regulated, and it was all about passing money to each other and contracts to their buddies and the old boy system. And I'm telling you that the brightest and the best did not win out.
Well, but I think
it was my buddy won.
If anybody doesn't think that the VCs, the banks,
and when those technologies came out, that it was financially in those people's best interest to accelerate it and
right. That's why they're fighting against this.
Now,
because
there's something set up to where it'll hurt them.
Okay, consider
they used it to help themselves, and now they're going to
consider alternating current versus direct current. Edison tried to shock elephants in order to get people to not use alternating current.
He did.
Yeah, he literally electrocuted elephants to death, and he had to use direct current to do it, ironically. And he tried to slow down the adoption of AC, even though it made the most sense. What happened? AC won out. No chance for DC whatsoever, because people didn't want relay stations in their towns. It was death by NIMBY, right?
Yeah,
from the start.
I think
the market ultimately decides.
But if any of you guys don't think that the reason that Bitcoin is getting where it basically it is that those powered interests are now plugged into it, right? Yeah. And so they it's exactly that. Like Sean said too, that it's the fact that Sean and Lisa, that it was they had a positive path with this new technology, whereas with Bitcoin, they see it as a direct threat to the banks. With Ethereum and token sales, the VCs saw a massive threat. And
that's what I think about too.
Well, I mean, it's true, but ultimately you can't suppress it once it's out, right?
Right. And that's
they have suppressed the token sales, though. There are not token sales. Why is that?
You could hypothetically just start ignoring them and be like, "Come for me."
But you can suppress it.
Yeah,
you can suppress it so long as people are willing to be afraid of men with guns.
I would say, say what you saw in late 2017 was one of the only clear examples we have in modern history of a free market economy doing its thing. That anybody in the world could participate, which was unheard of 20 years ago. That any project in the world could actually seek to get people interested in building on it. And, it's a combination of both the scarcity that blockchain allows and the open source ethos. And it was a beautiful thing. And what happened to it? It came in. So even people in our own industry were saying, oh, that's horrible. That's a security. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to do X, Y, Z.
For now.
Yeah, well,
right. But
so-
Sean in his post the other day articulated this really powerful sentiment that largely law-abiding people tolerate the people who are breaking the laws to take advantage of them and calling themselves rulers in the doing of it. They're tolerated because people believe in the importance of the spirit of the documents that found this country. They believe in the principles that society was founded on so much that they're willing to turn the other cheek for so long. When that stops happening, blockchain technology will enable the prospect of a third way of not just I'm going to stand my ground on my land with my defensive capabilities and my family, but I'm going to stand my ground on how I use the internet. And if you want to come to my door and try to stop me, then it's the same thing as invading my home. I don't think that they want to go to that level of fight. I don't think that there's that much fight in the regulatory state. If they want to, they can try, but it certainly won't kill off what we're trying to do with crypto. It's immutable.
To me, that like fundamentally the thing that's different about this tech is that it makes it harder to lie and cheat. It makes it more difficult, and it allows parallel financial rails so that you can route around corruption. If just like routers on the internet, they see censorship as damage and they route around it. Right, a broken network.
Right. At some point, we go, come and get me, though. Right?
Well, but see that I think is the key, because that is what is the winning stroke. You can't stop it, because if people want something, in the end they will get it. They might have to go through a lot to get it, and they might even tolerate a lot that they don't like. But in the end, it will happen. And the fact that Bitcoin has not been stopped, because I guarantee if it could have been stopped, they would have stopped it by now.
Just like they couldn't stop Uber, so they had to go ahead and adopt it.
And talking about the Luna thing, there was like $1 trillion absorbed by the market in sell-offs and all kinds of different things, liquidations and stuff like that. No too big to fail, no government bailouts, none of that. And we're still here. We survived.
Bail out Bitcoin.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like nobody bailed out Bitcoin, and it kept printing blocks, that kind of thing.
It's awesome.
So, what else do we have here? Let's move along. So thanks, Jocho. Crypto Curious. I saw Robinhood is launching a self-custody Web3 wallet. What is the feeling on this? I think it's awesome, personally. I don't ever use Robinhood. I don't know if I ever will, but I think it's great that they want to become more real, right? They've been fake trading for a long time. So
I'll believe it when I see it, man.
Yeah, if you want to do something cool, go for it.
Sounds like vaporware that's been their terms of use since founding.
Well, I think this is
great.
the same
I think
thing.
it's awesome. I don't believe them. There you go.
Okay.
You don't trust them. It's amazing and awesome.
I dare them to actually
all my
do
friends tell me, "Oh, I got some Doge and some Sheep. What should I do with it?" And I'm like, "Do you though? Do you have them?"
Yeah, they've been lying to their customer base for so long, just by the language that they use when they talk about best and I can't remember the terminology now. I did a whole thing on it, but when they talk about how you get the best price and whatever, they know they're lying to the people. So why would it change anything now?
You're giving trade streams and like letting people front run their orders and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting the theme, which I don't know anything about the culture of the company or anything like that. But in my opinion, anyone who would use Robinhood after what they pulled with GameStop and AMC, where it's like, oh my God, they can't. We have too much
making money.
Frankly, I won't be using them myself
they
under any circumstances unless they can meaningfully, legally promise and bind themselves to.
Well, maybe that's why
a guarantee that they won't use that data to feed Bloomberg terminals everything about the crypto space.
Maybe it's the only way they can get some people to like, okay, give them try them if they do have self custody. Maybe that's necessary for their image. I don't know.
Why would we give Citadel such a clean market signal as a community after what they've done for us?
Well, you would think that it's like look back at the most of the large data leaks that have happened. It never, for some reason, affects their stock, and that, to me, does not make any sense.
No accountability. Yeah. No accountability.
Right. Robinhood's customer is not their Web3 wallet provider users.
That's the thing. Is like their customer is Citadel. Citadel is buying that shit. Like, I don't want to give Citadel that, so I'm not going to put my assets in there.
But Robinhood's customer base used to be, and when they did what they did, they lost all of those people, all those idealistic people, all those millennials. I mean, me, I started using it right away, and then they came out, well, they're selling your data, but everything's free. I'm like, part of the revolution, whatever. Facebook's selling it, everyone's selling it. They're doing good, and they came across as this, for the people, the guys that started it.
It's called Robinhood.
Right. Sign up. You might win a free Tesla stock. Like,
and then they came out, and all the stuff came out. What they did, it's like, oh, they're no worse. I mean, they're no better. Yeah. They're actually worse because they pretended to be.
Yeah, I think you guys are worse than that. I think they had plausible deniability that they were in for the good, and the people that rugged everybody ultimately pulled out their trump card in the terms of use and said, you know what? This service is going to go the Citadel way, or it's going to go out of business. So and the people running it said,
if they're following,
if I make a stand, what's my hope of keeping this company? And they said, no, none, zero. You have to follow what Citadel says.
Good for us. Good for us to make them do that.
If they pull it off, and like if they have, I think they're doing no fee trading from self-custody Web3 wallet. Is what they're advertising. I don't know if they're going to just eat fees or what they're going to do, but I don't know. I'll use it, but if I got it, I don't know. Maybe if I got into trading and it was no fees, and I don't know. I would say I would strongly recommend that anybody who wants to use Robinhood's self-custody app for this seriously consider any other of their competitors first. You can literally download, if you want to stay on ERC20 or stay on any chain that's permissionless, you can go ahead and download the MetaMask app. It's further up in the alphabet. You don't have to scan as far down the page. And you can buy tokens and you can trade them on Uniswap. And guess what? That's not going to be helping any Citadel people figure out exactly what the market is so that they can figure out how to manipulate it.
Also, I'm sure they're going to have KYC. I'm sure they're going to have KYC.
Yeah.
With their wallet.
But like, yeah, okay. If they succeed, great, whatever.
So even if
I personally don't think it will be for the common good.
Greg, even if it's free and let's say it's feeless, self-custody, it's all the things, and it all works the way they say it's going to work. You're saying that it's still dangerous or not?
I would only trust them if they charged a fee and promised that fee came with absolute privacy and did not include partners.
Right.
Well, it's just like the if you look at
the data is what is valuable at that point.
Right. I'd rather pay them brokerage fees than let Citadel have that information.
Well, here's the question. It's a self-custody wallet, supposedly. Is it open source? Not likely. Do you trust them? I wouldn't trust them, especially with what their past actions have been, any more than I would trust Zoom after they found out how many backdoors they had. And Vitalik was like, oh, but they're saying that it's really is encrypted now. It's like really, Vitalik's going to trust that Zoom is actually doing what they said they would do, even though they've purposely lied in the past. It's crazy. And this is the same thing. It's like you don't know if the key that it generates is known to them. I mean, it's unlikely, but if someone were to do that,
I just don't. I think that there should be some serious conversations about trust with that company before I adopt it myself.
Yes,
that would be me. So that's and everybody's got their own risk tolerance, but my risk tolerance is like I don't trust them.
Yeah,
so.
Me too. we should have votes at the end of every one of these questions
to weigh in. Yeah,
I think that's a no.
All right, cool. So
I'll
look up later to see if there's any open sourceness on that, but probably not. All right, so Chad asks, what exactly is a Web3 culture war? Could you give us some examples? And thank you. Sure.
Wow.
I guess we did gloss over it a little bit, talking about how there are people who, prefer their thing over this other thing. I think of it as like, which Web3 do you want? Which it could be like Ethereum against Ethereum,
right.
People that are like, oh, you're not using Ethereum correctly, so you're not really Web3. We're doing Web3 the way that like Web3 is such an abstract. It's just like,
yeah,
what is it?
Term.
Yeah. That kind of
the definition of it is probably argument one in the culture war over Web3.
I was going to say that I was watching this thing this morning, and just to do a quick like overview. So, Web 1 is like when the internet first came out and it was just static pages. So you go to a company, it's just a static page. It's kind of like Wikipedia, just information static. Web 2 is more like Facebook, where it's targeted advertising. They're sending you information, but you're looking at stuff, going to websites, but they're also stealing your information. Anything you look at, and you're putting information in, they're grabbing your stuff, and then they're selling your stuff and your information, maybe your credit card list where you bought stuff or whatever, what sites you're logging into, whatever. They're selling that data to different companies. So Web3 is where you take control of your data, where it's decentralized with all different places, or what would I call them? Points of
Single points of failure are dispersed.
Yes,
trust
for the
centers.
Data, trust centers, and so that it can't be taken from you. So and it can't be shut down or stopped. So like, if I upload a video to something like Odyssey, it's not at one location. It's actually at several different servers. So it couldn't be like taken down. It doesn't have one central point of attack or whatever.
Yep.
And so but Web3 could be, like you guys were saying, like a Bitcoin Web3 like community or ecosystem, Ethereum ecosystem. And so there's these like maxis that will then say, well, you're not using cryptocurrency, the decentralized ecosystem in the way that I believe it should be made. Right. And like, I was speaking at Bitcoin Day, and this one kid came in and he's like, well, so I have a question for you. Is it money or is it an investment? And I was like, I use it as both. And he was just, mortified that I didn't use Bitcoin the way he wanted me to use Bitcoin. And so I was doing it all wrong, and I should burn in hell forever. And, all that.
Yeah, no, it's nonsense.
That's just one example.
These people will also simultaneously evince kind of a fear in the weakness of the thing that they support by what they're doing, right? There's a lot of fear about, the only way Bitcoin can succeed is if nobody else has any other types of platform, and therefore we need to rally around it. Right. It's these ideas that only one idea can succeed, and we must decide and rally around it up front, else it will not be sufficiently defended when the wolves come.
Which I think Polkadot's doing a little bit of that, aren't they, with their Polkadot Foundation or whatever, and they're doing grants, and like they call themselves Web3 Foundation or whatever.
Yeah, everybody wants to be the foundation of Web3, though.
Of Web3, yeah.
But it misrepresents the fundamental power of Web3, right? That
the point of it is that it's decentralized,
right? That if you want to target a court order at any one person or any one individual or any one company, or even like 100,000 companies, the biggest court case that has ever happened plus one, you can't subpoena that many people without substantially and dramatically disrupting a society in a way that will be halted by the very system meant to adjudicate it, right? Like the courts will say, screw you, you can't sue 100,000 people building this. And some of them are in different countries. And another district attorney will say, screw you, we can't indict this many people. It's all of America.
Can I bring up
That's what decentralization's power is.
2 points are important to this is historical analogy. Would be the breakup of Christianity, right? There used to be a Catholic, literally meaning universal church, and you had a schism, and then it forked like crazy. So and it turned into internal religious wars where they fought each other. It was kind of crazy. And the other thing is about whether or not it can be brought down is the fact that when you have J.P. Morgan Chase involved in the ownership IP of MetaMask, which is a very central part of what is considered Web3, even by the maximalists, you have to wonder how, I don't know. It's to me an obvious centralization of a point of potential failure for that Web3 vision.
We've seen MetaMask have issues with centralization already. Just the default settings that it comes with unless you go and change to a custom RPC server.
Yeah,
and
and nothing. You have to go in and manually change it to Rivet unless you want to by default be using Invira.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. And that is a good point, because it will be improved in time.
Well, and never mind that the provider can be hijacked by the DApp builder, such that your choice gets overridden.
That's or you could have Hopium and say JP Morgan's just hedging its bets for when.
I don't know.
It's positive. It's positive the banks coming in. And it all Why, Sean? Because it's going to help my number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only reason that you would accept that argument as a crypto person. Like, it'll help my number. Chase is coming in. They're going to bring in. Oh, where are they going to bring the money? Maybe Luna.
Yeah, maybe you got to get some MetaMask coin.
And they will come in. We just shouldn't take their first offer because they're bluffing that they have any negotiating position.
Just like the aliens, Greg, they're already here.
Right. And but like the whole system coming in and saying like we have to change our ways or they won't adopt it. That is the argument that they make. And we don't have to change. Yeah. They have to adopt us. It's not vice versa.
Yeah. That's I 100% agree with that. And I was going to say also, Greg, you were talking about like the fundamental value of Web3 is this, and they're missing it. That's kind of what the web cultural wars are about, is that like everybody has a different opinion about what the most important feature of Web3 is. And
far be it from me to force it upon you, my opinion. I don't have any desire to have authority to use violence to silence you at any point.
So I think that like, to me, one of the most interesting features is just the security of it. If you don't have to keep private information in a central database that is just a big honeypot waiting to get hacked into and sold, then it's obviously more secure. If you assume that a system is going to be compromised,
mutually assured destruction.
If you design it in the way that you assume, the adversary is going to be in the system, right, with maximum permissions, that's where Web3 is built in a way that's a national security solution. And that's maybe the most important thing to me.
Right. It's an internet beyond fuckery in a way.
For the design of Web3 to be more in line with, like sovereignty as a nation. Maybe that's my thing. And somebody else cares about the, how much money they can personally make off of it. And somebody else cares about, if they can use it to cut out the middlemen for their industry and sell their art or drive their Uber with somebody taking a cut and things like that.
Exactly.
All of those.
The Web3 mindset is just like
important.
The key to the Web3 mindset is, okay, build your fork. If people join it, great. If people leave mine for yours, great. Just don't go get an army of jackboots to tell me I can't use mine anymore.
Yeah,
that's not a fair way to get adoption.
There's so much space out there. The whole industry is like one Apple, not even one Apple company size. So like literally everybody's idea, there's room for it. There's room for all of them. They're all going to be able to succeed.
You brought up what you think is most important. Tommy Crypto said in the chat that the first mass adoption of Web3, in my opinion, will be decentralized identity. Elon gets this. Followed quickly by verifiable credentials. Those two things will absolutely disrupt your workflow. I think
those are so dangerous.
What's going to be the first big, and I'd like to know what you guys think, the first mass adoption that really pushes Web3 has been video games and the use of making, GameFi, making money with games and being able to own your own stuff,
very
metaverse.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm all about when it comes to identity systems. When it comes to identity systems, I think something that people need to keep in mind is the importance of the ability to quickly spin up new identities. That should be a capability that people are granted.
Anonymity.
And yes, that does mean that bad actors can burn an identity, refresh one, and come back. And it does mean that they can try to grift by creating multiple interacting identities to fool you into thinking there's something else going on that's not. But the only way that we have a society that doesn't ultimately devolve back into locked down and controlled by a centralized authority is one where we have that right without permission. Bankruptcy by right is the rule of thumb when it comes to people who screw up on blockchain. And if we insist upon anything else, then we inherit all of the controls of the old system by default. So like I think that's the risk of identity. It's like if we were going to draw a line that connects people to the real world, we need to make sure that line is breakable and refreshable at will by them.
Speaking of the real world, I think this last comment's an important one to keep in mind, whether or not you agree with it. But there are people that exist that think freedom is bad. You know, we aren't universally.
I was going to say that's a really good comment. I have friends.
You're welcome to build a chain and compete with me.
You know, that Martini guy, I don't know if you guys know him. As a YouTuber. Smart guy, he's a friend of mine. I like him. He's a good guy. He's British. And he said something one time that I literally just stared at the screen for like 10 minutes. I'm like, did he just say that? He was talking about the election. It was a couple of years ago. And he was like, you know, in America, everyone's vote counts the same. Can you believe the stupidity of that? I mean, everyone's vote is the same. And I was like, did he just say that? Did someone I think is intelligent just talk about that like it was
Shouldn't be based on
bad?
What does he mean, though? He could be a clever double entendre, right? Because everything equaling the same, right, can also, then logically be equated to none of it being valuable.
And it wasn't satire, was it?
No, that he's that ingrained in the class system, like where it's like, oh, you're a commoner.
I met somebody at a college party at UF that I started debating with him, but I had to. Eventually, I just figured out that we fundamentally are different people, so there's no point.
Yeah.
But I was talking to him something about food access, and maybe there's a conspiracy between healthcare and welfare. You know, where like people that get bad food and have bad health and this and that. So we started talking about that, and then he started talking about how I forget exactly what it was, but he was defending the idea that maybe it's okay if the elite get the better food because they're the ones leading us and they need to make all the decisions that guide the population.
Kill off the people on welfare.
There's a lot
give
of
them bad food.
It's a big club, but you're not in it.
It makes me sad that somebody thinks that, man.
There are a lot of people that
that smacks of somebody who thinks they're in the elite.
The eugenics thing. There are a lot of people that I mean, it's kind of it's crazy, but and I would actually say about that comment that some cultures believe freedom is bad. I think that's our culture. I actually think that the word freedom is considered good because that's us.
But look at this comment right after it. Look at the comment right after it.
But they don't mean for everyone. They mean for them, not for everyone else. And that kind of leads me back to Greg. I want to ask you to clarify. I may have misunderstood. You said something about blockchain and allowing people to. When we were talking about multiple, where is it? Multiple identities.
Oh yeah, the decentralized identity
thing. To be able to claim bankruptcy. Did you mean it's okay for people to be like to go anonymous and claim bankruptcy? Well, because that seems really great if that's me, but what if I owe you something?
Right.
That
I think here's the key. Reputation systems are going to be
the
sticking
comment
point,
right after. You can look at that.
The sticking point is, should reputation systems be joined by permission? Should you be able to leave the U.S. credit market and have your credit score not matter anymore? And go and join another country's credit system and have that one matter instead, but not take into account what happened before. The question is tough, right? Because there are some moral arguments on both sides, but ultimately, if there is a choke point where the real world must connect to something verifiable to you in order to make this thing work, then you create a point where where somebody with power politically can leverage that information to develop an advantage, right? Like you can basically say, let's say you had a law that said you have to get your new identity at the DMV, and only the government will keep track of who you used to be when you go refresh your identity. Only the government, right? What does that mean? That's Chinese government or our government or an authoritarian regime that's even worse.
And that's why if you approach
if we make that connection, then we invite the authoritarians back in.
Yeah, if you approach that question from the angle of the laws and or how we set it up, it's going to lead to that centralization.
Yeah, but can't
authority.
community?
But that's the thing.
Your answer.
If you treat it as an individual liberty issue, I should be able to offer you a service, and if you can't come with any history to know whether you fit the reputation model that I want to service, then you shouldn't. Then I can say I'm not going to accept it. You have to show me your history, and that's when it turns the other way. That okay, there's a reason I have to maintain a good history instead of it being like it is now, where it's a bunch of arbitrary
you get
rules.
stuck in this history
It's
system
the carrot and stick thing.
by default.
Like Argo said, identities should gather value and credibility over time. So you may be able to, get $1 million loan, be able to start up a company, have a lot of freedom. And then if you declare bankruptcy or change your identity or whatever, now the most you'll be able to get out of someone's like $100 loan. You're starting over. So
but we shouldn't have a system. What I'm suggesting is that we shouldn't have a system that insists upon having men with guns come for you if you're bad enough remedy attached to it at the other end.
Okay, I thought you were saying like you should be able to, you should be able to
economic failure.
Have bankruptcy with no consequences. Because I'm like,
the consequences
are
are
the other
a
side
valid
of
identity.
In the end, I think the discussion around Web3 is kind of the point of Web3 and maybe the culture wars would be, the projects that facilitate people being able to set up a replacement system on their own, independently, organically, is what we want, and that's hopefully what Web3 is.
Right. It's a preserved right of exit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, we got through all the questions, man.
Yeah, that's all of them. Awesome. Well, I think we're probably coming to the end of the discussion too. Is there any tangents anybody wanted to run off on at last minute before we wrap up here? Because no, I just wanted to thank you guys. This is good. All of you, thank all of you for hosting, for being here with us. And let's go around and talk about what everyone's doing with their own projects, and what everybody wants to shout out at the end of this episode today. Joe, let's start with you because you're next to me on the screen.
Yes. Okay, so we just had another article published in Cointelegraph. Go check that out. To me, it's super interesting, core to a lot of what can be done with blockchain. And in this case, the context is to leverage the technology for transparency and fairness in gaming and contests. And essentially, it's a mechanism that did not exist before blockchain, where anyone participating in an event can independently prove that they're not being cheated. Like say, and if it's in a contest or there's a giveaway. And the thing is, the fact that if you remember the Tron giveaway, where they were not intending to actually give away the Tesla, that the technology already existed to solve that issue, right? Where it's a decentralized thing. So how do I trust that you're not just giving it to your nephew, right? This is the way. It's a good article. Interesting subject for the tech, and also I do not know, there should be another paper coming out soon, next either in the next day or two or at the beginning of the week next week, that will be interesting too. So
awesome, thank you. Greg, what's up on your end? Tell us about Rivet. And
right now, I actually got a great little piece of news for anybody who might be listening, who also happens to be a crack DevOps engineer who wants to work with a bunch of people who believe that the power is within every developer who plugs into a blockchain system to rewrite history. If that's you and you want to build tools that enable that revolution to happen, then hit me up, because we are in need of a DevOps engineer with some skill. So that is out there for anyone to reach out to me. Find me on Twitter, or shoot me an email, or contact me in the lair, and we can talk.
Awesome, cool. And to follow up with what Greg just said, he did on the side. He promised to write up an article on Den about how exactly to connect your MetaMask to Rivet instead of the default RPCs. So we'll see.
I do have that. Yeah,
of course.
we should have that link. We should post that. Yeah.
Yeah, Lisa, tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm back on YouTube.
Congrats.
Since last last week I'm out of jail. So Sean was on the show with me yesterday. And then this morning, Greg came on. I'm also the host of a Veritasium DAO channel with my friend Jeff. And with us with Reggie. Veritasium did a forensic analysis on block that was interesting and challenging. And so we had a great conversation there. That'll be out within the next week or so. And Joe was on last week or week before, I think. So you guys can go check out some of those episodes on the Veritasium DAO. We're looking at our next meetup for my Happy Hour Roadshow in June. Will be in Peoria, Illinois. So you can go to likequeenlisa.net and find out all the information about that. But we do a Crypto 101 class on the road that's free and open to the public. And then we do a live happy hour show where I give away some crypto and some silver and talk about freedom and empowering yourself to get decentralized, I guess, get out of those systems. So.
And that was a great discussion this morning, Lisa. I had a great time. And I think that everybody in this audience would appreciate the conversation there. Like, it gets into some depth, like some serious depth on some issues of intellectual property that I rarely have had the chance to get so deep with a person on and ask some really great questions I think a lot of people are curious about. So
yeah, and we hope to. I thought it was great. I really appreciated you inviting Reggie to maybe come on this show. I think he would love it.
Yeah, he's smart. He's a smart cat. He's fun to talk to.
I'll have to catch that. I didn't see that episode. I'll go back and watch it. And thank you for all of the educational trips, all of the touring that you're doing too, Lisa. If you ever come down and want to set something up in North Florida, I'm in Gainesville at UF, so we can do that whenever you're
actually playing year. So I will get in touch with you about that.
Awesome. Sean, talk to us. What's up, man?
Just took a new position. Going to be running the website, the Church of Craig Wright is Satoshi.
Going to be running that website?
Craig Wright is Satoshi.org.
I'm going to buy the .eth right now.
Yeah, you're taking the donations. You're in charge of donations.
Yeah, I'm in charge of donations. Sure. We only take Bitcoin Cash.
Of course.
Sean starting a new comedian career.
Yeah. I got a couple of interviews this week. Check out me and Lisa. We have a show on Tuesdays. Just check out my socials. So Sean. The Czar 15 asked for our socials to be in the description, which why don't y'all putting them in the description?
That's a good idea. Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah, put all that stuff in there just so you can copy and paste it every week.
Noted.
Yeah, we need a show notes vote of some sort. I feel like we should get the DAO together and see what should go in the show.
So I actually have an AR-15 that I need to go pick up today. Actually, I bought a buttload of guns, man. I bought this AR-12 or no, it looks like an M16, but it's shotgun, right? 12 gauge. And I had one and I gave it to someone and I liked it. So I bought this other one and I didn't even try. It's like a $700 gun and I bid like $180 on it. And I won. And I was like, oh man.
Wow.
I was telling this friend of mine, he's like, I want that, man. I want it, man. I'll give you $500 for it. And I was like, oh, I'll think about it. And he just is bugging me, like bothering me. So I'm like, I'm going to buy another damn gun. So I keep trying to buy one. But while I'm looking, I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, I'll bid on that. And I won like 5 guns. So now I have like 5 or 6 guns sitting down at that gun store.
Wait, you won them?
Yeah. Auction, right?
Like he bids on them. Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, wait, where are these?
Which, by the way, you mentioned a boatload. Make sure you don't put the crypto on that same boat, okay? Because
I thought you said
the guns are lost. All right.
Boatload. No, I said buttload.
Oh, all right.
A buttload is it's got to be convertible to a boatload.
More than so many handguns. Like there's like an IRS thing, like the $10,000. They have to tell the IRS if you buy more than 2 in a week, they send a special form to the ATF.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never bought a week.
You can buy as many as you want, but if you buy like more than 2 handguns in a week, you get a special notification gets sent to them.
Sus at that point.
Good thing you have lots of kids.
Yeah, that's illegal. I just say that.
So
I'm just saying you could buy
That's what
gifts
happened,
for
dude. I
your
bought Christmas
children.
presents. So I
Christmas
bought like
presents.
3 handguns in a week from the same
Yes.
store.
They're
And they were like, wait,
gifts.
you were in here before. Oh, hold on, I got to fill this other form. So with this, oh, it's just alerts the ATF that you're buying three guns. I was like, why do they need to know?
a truck.
They're worried about it.
Bought it in
They're
cash.
making an army, Sean.
Yeah.
So awesome. There is we just wrapped up on Den for the LCP this month, Sean, but there is a firearms layer coming around. It's up towards the top on votes. So,
I'm already following it.
oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
And as far as Den goes, Den.Social, today is Thursday. So check this out. In about an hour or less, there will be a post on Den in the Den layer. And also, so I'm going to do this in the Den layer, in the humor layer, and in the Gainesville layer. And the idea is that we have an awesome improv comedy show tonight, coming from a very top-notch studio with like 6K cameras and Black Pearl nice microphones, and it's really, really good stuff.
6,000 cameras. That's a lot of cameras.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're not. We're gonna just have the one camera for the stage, but we're gonna have 3 sets of improv comedy from some professionals here in Gainesville, and we're gonna broadcast it to Den. And if any of you are on it that are listening, the goal here is to demo. Okay, this is something that you can do and organize on Den, of course, but also I would like people to use the tipping feature on Den. And so if you tip this video out, this broadcast, it'll be a free live stream tonight at 7:30 Eastern. It'll start. All of the tips that the performers get on this video, I'm going to give it to them personally, which means they're going to have a Den account. They're going to have to download the app and open an account to get the tips. So we get free entertainment on Den. We get more creators on Den. Everyone wins. So that's what's going on tonight. There is a DAO meeting today also, a Den DAO meeting that happens every Thursday. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern. But definitely tune into the, there's not a live stream set up right now, but I promise it'll be there in like an hour. So that'll be called, it'll be titled something along the lines of Improv Extravaganza. So look for that.
Nice.
Impravaganza.
Yeah. So that's what we got going on over there.
There you go. Impravaganza.
Den is almost done. We'll talk about it some more, but probably next week. And then we'll have DMs to talk about for the next coffee show. Those are on Wednesday, every Wednesday at 9 Eastern. So that's what I got going on over there.
Cool.
Thanks again, everyone, for hosting.
You need to start a Den.
What's that?
A den of scum and villainy.
Huh.
Yes.
I just found out today you can buy your own lair if you want to just go ahead and pony up. You don't have to get it approved. You can just
That's
pay.
true. Yeah, we have expanded the options there.
People need to make that joke all the time. Oh, that Den?
That Den?
Never
I
fine.
thought that was the only way to start a layer was to pay for it.
Well, there's a couple of different. So you can do a business layer. There's 2 main types. I won't go into a comprehensive review of Den right now, but there's 2 main types. You have the kind that are the business layer, where I have a specific thing I want to do with specific modeling and specific governance styles.
With your own community.
With your own community that is pre-existing, and we want to have a layer, but we want complete control over that layer, right? That's one method. The other method is, and that's the one that you can just purchase business to business. And then the other type of layer is called the LCP. And that's where people propose, okay, I think this is a good idea to have. We don't have a community for this. And then each month there's a voting round. And some of those layers are created for free, but they're community layers. They have a maximum, whatever the votes are at that time gets converted into the NFTs that we use for ownership and passive income and all that. And those are a permanent supply. The business layers can change their supply if they have a reason to or a need to do that. And then the community layers, once they get created, that's what they are forever. You can still, trade the lot, the token, but you can't get more of them.
Yeah, like this show itself, we created as a business layer, and we started with just, I think, 3 NFTs to control it. And then as we started the show, the whole point was that everybody who's on the show gets a piece, and all the people who ask questions and the people who propose the chosen topics. And it's a really interesting thing because it's just organic. It
is because I tried the same thing, but a different strategy where I minted all of the tokens I was going to need ahead of time. And I found that the world blockchain layer, that strategy is probably what I should have done. And so if for example, I'm thinking about maybe I should, since this was our 30th episode for the coffee show, maybe I should get it out of the Den layer and start my own layer with it now that it's like going for a while and it has a little bit of a following. And if I do the coffee show on its own layer, like World Blockchain, then I'm probably going to do the same model, right? I just mint them as I need them, that kind of thing. So yeah, you can design it however you want. And that goes for governance too. If you have a DAO out there, you can design the governance tools on Den to just use whatever you already have and just to make it an easier interface and that kind of thing.
So, and just if anybody wants to know this, if you're on Reddit and your community is banned or it's borked or whatever, censorship has ruined it, and you want to try to create it over here, and it's just something silly that's probably not going to pass anytime soon because there are only so many votes to go around, and not everybody cares all that much about Hold My Red Bull or I love that one because it's the opposite of like Hold My Beer because the people win when they try something ridiculous. But these are the kinds of things that are not on Den yet, and could be if somebody were to want to go in with a co-investor on that. I'm interested in bringing Reddit layers to Den.
Yeah,
so
we do have.
Me too. Yes.
Yeah, the LCP layers. I think what Greg was getting at is any of them. If you look at the list that has more than 8 or more people, like even if it's number 45 on the list, not at the top at all, you can still pay a fee to create that in Matter. The token that you get for free from using Den, you can pay it to create, or you can go get it on the open market. It's pretty cheap right now when everything's collapsing. So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna do that for the tutorials layer. So enough about Den.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry, I appreciate it.
Thanks again to everyone. Next week's theme is going to be host's choice, it looks like. So we'll see how that goes.
We don't know how that's going to work. Sorry to throw it in. How do we?
We have to figure that out. Is that going to be like each of us are individually going to talk about what the hell we want, or is it be?
Do we? I was thinking maybe we reply to that post with what my choice would be for the subject, and then anybody that asks in there. But I don't know. Then how do we rank? Or do we?
I don't know. Could I guess each of us could reply to that post with what we want, and then we could vote on them. I don't know.
Let's just barrel into it. Let's try all the systems.
Anarchy.
There you go. Let's just see do whatever you want. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's figure that out between now and then. That's what I think.
Yep.
I like it.
So that'll be next week. Tune in for that. It sounds like it'll be interesting. Share this episode because the more you share, the more the hosts and topic contributors will get. Everybody wins. Like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you next week. Thanks again to all the hosts and all of the denizens and everyone else. And bye.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. Adaptable approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now?